Long-term plan, Mr. Ryan. Yeah. Now, look, I'm liking the way this is going, and I think getting this underway when we made that decision back in May was a very good idea, because it looks like you're well in train to receive the new council and get right into it.
Yes, look, in terms of a quick update, we are on track. We have an overall project plan for the LTP that was approved by this committee. We now have work stream plans for each component, so the IS, the consultation document, asset plans, activity plans. Those work streams have been built. There's a heavy input from the resilience and strategy people into the front end of the build, rather than trying to pass a filter at the last moment. The plan is to deliver to you a draft LTP by the 1st of June next year, which will give you a measured, reasonable time to align and refine the document. The annual plan, which is peripheral to this, the early indications are, at this point, a light level of change, which would create the opportunity to pre-engage on the LTP if you wish. That probably is a conversation for after the election, but the window is there and is remaining there so far. Now, the two risks, I wasn't going to go through the report line by line, but at the pre-meeting among for the chair, the Deputy Mayor suggested that a close focus on the risks, and I should talk about risks to the process on a proactive basis. Mm-hmm. There are really only two that are apparent at this point. One is simply that staff don't have those components ready for June next year. In other words, the complexity of especially the infrastructure strategy and the draft capital program. Those things are difficult to build, and they traditionally have been a bit late. So we're suggesting that those milestones need to be very closely monitored so that they do arrive with the rest of the pack for the 1st of June next year. The second one is that we need some early direction from councillors. So I think in the May meeting of this group, the Deputy Mayor moved that there's a workshop in November to provide an early steer on the LTP. That needs to occur, and that's separate from induction. Induction is, for the new councillors, is LTP 101, what is an LTP, how does it work? That's quite distinct from what was asked for, which was the capacity for councillors to talk as a group about what they want to see the LTP actually achieving, and give us a bit of a steer on that. Not at the detailed level, but at the high level, so that we know that when we're building between November and June, that we're building what the council wants. Because the biggest risk of the project is that we build a draft for the middle of next year and it isn't what you want. Then we have to tear it all down and start again, and your window to consider the LTP gets used up. That's the chief risk to the project. So neither of those appear to be off track at the moment, but I'm simply highlighting that they're the ones to watch.
Okay. I mean, I think the annual plan conversation for next year is really important, and I think it will be helpful for legal to make sure they've got advice ready to go on actually whether you can almost flag it or make it part of a deeper LTP pre-consultation.
Yes.
I love the fact that you put in using citizens' juries, because I think that is a great opportunity for the council, not just for the LTP, but for a whole bunch of things. And I think in a way, traditionally, because the LTP comes mid-term, by the time you get there, you know, you've got to sort of redo your strategies and what the directions are from councillors. Approaching this right after an election is good, because hopefully people have been elected on their various views, and
yes.
So they can immediately feed into that, and it's fresh.
Yes.
And there's a sense the public has given some validation towards that. So I think it's a very good place to start. So that all looks very good to me. Any questions from Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it does look good. The one thing that seems to be not a lot of visibility is around actions agreed to in the last LTP and the last annual plan, and who's actually reporting on those, because it does seem quite hard to constantly be in a state of moving forward with a new draft annual plan without knowing that the work that you've asked for in the last one's actually being done. So there are a number of reports requested and information that was sought. So I just don't know quite how that's got visibility through this process.
It's not really, this is planning for 2021 LTP. Now, I'm not saying that the work you're looking for doesn't need to happen, but that it isn't part of this work stream. The routine reporting you get on performance, so levels of service, the capital program, the budgeting, financial reports, is based on what was in the last LTP and annual plan. So exceptions to that should show up there.
Right.
If there were individual action items that require follow-up, they're part of the normal committee process rather than planning for the next LTP.
I just think in terms of transparency, it'd be really good to have like a public-facing record of what the council agreed in response to submissions and what people had said and what the actions were and when they would be complete. Because we don't get it as part of the performance reporting, and I appreciate that's around budget issues, but for the non-budget issues where we've asked for a report to come on a certain issue, there doesn't seem to be a very good, easy way for the public to follow. You know, I made a submission, council agreed to do this, where's it at?
There is quite a detailed process for following up on action items adopted by council and the committees. But that's separate to LTP 2021 planning. So I'm not invalidating it, I'm just saying it's a separate stream of work.
Okay. I mean, I think that's something you can maybe take up with the Office of the
In
Chief
terms of
Executive.
5, so, you know, are we aiming to have close off of the previous annual plan before we develop that plan? Because this is work's underway for the draft annual plan, so that's why I was thinking it was relevant to this.
Okay. Well, generally speaking, it's not possible to close off the current annual plan because it's in flight. It only finishes next June. We need to have a draft annual plan for February, so they're actually separate but parallel processes. It seems to me that maybe we need to talk offline about what action items from the annual plan LTP discussions you want followed up on, but there is a committee approach to tracking all of those. It's just not this project.
Okay, Jimmy?
Thank you. I'm particularly concerned is because this term or previous term, we have accumulated lots of the strategic document, particularly for those either the strategy or policy or bylaw, etc. But now this term, this kind of the strategic document, actually is to be implemented continually. But in November, the new council absolutely that's high level review those strategic directions. But I'm concerned is because, for instance, like if an implementation plan already approved by the council, etc., then also need to align with supporting the budget. Otherwise it's impossible to implement those strategic document effective, efficiently. So how to fill the gap is my concern.
Okay, if I've got this right, look, there are a lot of strategy documents in the council, and they will be used by the managers to build their activity plans that go into the LTP. So they inform the activity plans. But ultimately, the council, as the governing body over the LTP, has to make some calls between competing demands. So yes, the strategies inform the draft LTP, but ultimately the council is the decision maker on, to put it crudely, the winners and losers in that discussion, because there's always more demand than there is supply. So the LTP is where you sort out those issues. I'm not sure if I've nailed what you're looking for.
Because while the previous 7 year last previous term, yes, we have an opportunity to see those activity management plan. But this term, we have no chance to see those detailed activity management plan. But how do we know? Those budget already put in the draft one.
Okay. Well, maybe I can get closer now. Yes, last time the activity plans were not very transparent.
Yes.
But this time the process is engineered so that not only will they be transparent and presented by the manager for Q&A purposes,
Okay.
but the window to do so is 6 months compared to, say, 2 or 3, which was, Jamie's nodding, he remembers the old process, which means that there is time to have the presentation, look at the budgets, the levels of service, the capital, and if necessary, go away and circle back, which is quite different from the slam bam, 1 hour and it's done approach. So it's engineered to give you that opportunity to do it in a measured way.
Okay. Okay.
But
Thank
it
you.
all depends on us hitting June
Yeah.
to create that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
Dion?
Yeah, just a quick one. Excuse me. The citizens' juries, now that's really cool. Is this on the path towards, say, participatory budgeting, or are we ever going to be looking at those kind of methods for things?
Look, they're all on the table as possibilities. These ones came up at the Society of Local Government Managers conference where, especially the smaller councils that are under a bit of pressure, they're more agile than, say, Auckland, Christchurch, Wellington. They've done very innovative stuff in this space. Social media, citizens' juries. I mean, the obvious thing that leaps out about the citizens' jury is a youth component. Boards represent a geographic area, whereas a jury can represent the city or an age group or a demographic, which is not what a board does. So they're not conflicting with the boards. They're just a different way of understanding what's going on. So yes, all of those things, co-location, participatory budgeting, citizens' juries, they're on the table, but they're more about the November conversation. What does the new council want to do? We're probably not trying to solve that right now, but just flag that that's the discussion to have in November.
I mean, I personally would like to see us accelerating, or maybe actually just being a little bit more sort of proactive in the conversation of participatory budgeting, and it might be actually at the community board levels. I don't know. I mean, we need to try it somewhere and see how it works and get people involved that way.
Absolutely agree. Look, to be honest, the old approach of we create a draft, we put it out for consultation, we stick things in letterboxes, and people write back to us on a submission form, that's a little bit old now. That's not really what most councils are trying to do anymore. And we can do better and different. And this is just a starter for 10 on the ingredients of what that might look like.
And I've got one other question, sorry, Raf. Is a couple of the submissions last annual plan talked about the way that our data is presented in the financial statements and all that being very hard to navigate. You don't see the sheets of, the work programs and all of those kind of things. Are we looking at that and figuring out how we can do this better? Because I totally agree that it's almost a minefield of stuff to try and get through.
Under that point 6, ideas for the future, under the bonnet of some of those very short statements like better consultation documents, is actually a whole raft of things that we've picked up from what other councils are doing in New Zealand but around the world. For example, and just quickly to address your question, some councils have decided that the CD is not a pamphlet you stick in a letterbox, it's a website. And it's in very plain English, but a website gives you the ability to link to detail. So instead of a static paper page where you have to troll through stuff, you get a very plain English explanation with the ability to dive into the detail of a program or a budget or whatever, and then pull back out and keep rolling.
Yeah.
Which is far more user-friendly
Yes.
for people than flicking back and forth between 3 volumes.
So is it likely that that's going to happen anytime soon?
Well, look, it's on the table for this LTP. That's why that paragraph is
Okay,
there. But
cool.
they're not decisions I make unilaterally. But equally, I don't want to surprise people in November with, oh, here's a bunch of new ideas. This is just a way of introducing, look, there's half a dozen things we could do differently and better. And the need and the risk is that we don't have those discussions in November.
Okay.
Because if you miss November, it's Christmas, no one's around in January, February is annual plan, the next thing you're in March, and we've lost 5 months.
Yeah.
And those 5 months would be the ones where you could do these things.
Cool. No, good to hear. Thanks.
Yep. Andrew? Well, it'd be good that Pete will be here over Christmas and January working away.
Thank you. I've got 4 questions. The first one relates to risk. The second one relates to engagement with new councillors. Third relates to paragraph 6 of the resolution, and the fourth relates to ongoing reporting. So you have got a recommendation where we're to note that the organisation's on schedule to deliver a first draft LTP to elected members on the 1st of June with the aim of being able to achieve consensus. You wouldn't be putting that forward if there were risks that you felt existed currently to that statement. And what I heard in your presentation was a commitment to continue to monitor those risks. And it would be good, I think, if this verbal report included an update on the monitoring of those risks that you've identified that may come about in the future without us needing to, without me needing to make notes today to call them out next time, for example.
Sure, I mean, that's why I raised them today, even though they're not actually red flags. That's simply where the risks would normally be found.
Yep.
There is time to do this work between now and the 1st of June. It's entirely possible, it's entirely feasible, and it's planned. The two things that would normally happen to stop that are staff make things more complex than they need to be, or we don't have a good steer on what the LTP should have in it, which is why I'm emphasising November.
Yep.
The odds of building an LTP by guesswork and having it be what councillors want are zero.
Yep. So, I mean, my question, you're committed to calling out those risks if they manifest over the next few months?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Next part comes to engagement with councillors, and we're noting that the committee requested a workshop. It would be really good if we were able to, instead of noting the committee requested a workshop, be able to say a workshop is currently being planned. Are we in that position, or is there something that needs to happen so that we can do that?
There was a little bit of blur between that workshop and the induction, and that's since been sorted out. So it's now clear in the organisation of November, because that's a complex period, that there is an induction for new councillors on LTP 101, but that is quite different from the workshop you're discussing, and that is to be organised.
Right. So we're not yet in a position where we can say that has been planned, but we can be confident that it will happen.
I don't have dates for it, but the wheels are turning.
I'm wondering whether in item 7 we can just add wording that says the committee reiterates this request.
Okay.
I think we just need to really call out that there's an expectation.
Is that we have an induction program and a workshop program, but that has to be accepted by the new council. So we will be presenting that to the new council when they come in for acceptance. So there is a draft program in place.
So currently it is being planned,
Yep.
but it's subject to acceptance by the new council. All right, I think we can be comfortable on that basis, that's fine. And then looking at paragraph 6, short videos on each LTP approach will be provided to councillors shortly. Presumably that's to the new council, or to the new council as well.
Yes, I mean, they'd be ideally, because the ideas are still fresh, we want to get the video from Solgum, local government management, get their permission to put it on our hub, cut it into relevant streams so people can go to the bit they want, and have it available for both this council and the new council.
Yep, great, that's good. And then finally, you've been providing really good reports that I think are given us a good level of confidence to this committee. This is the last meeting of this committee. The next council meeting won't be until the end of October.
Yes.
And it may take time before this committee or its new equivalent meets in the new term. What's the process for us continuing to get timely reports as we go through that process? I'm, I guess, possibly suggesting that in the absence of a new version of this committee, or until that's formed, perhaps these reports should come to council so that we're still getting reports on a monthly basis, because if there is some risk to report and there isn't a mechanism for reporting it, or that we've got to specifically get a report onto an agenda that wouldn't naturally be there in order to report it, that might be, at this critical time, where we end up falling behind without even realising it's happening.
Okay, sure.
So, I mean, my request is, until the new committee is formed, the reporting comes to council so that we still get monthly reports.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for that. We've got a set of resolutions there. Do I have a mover? Moved Andrew, seconded Jimmy. Any discussion? Yanni?
So, I mean, I think this is really good. I think this is a really good framework, and it's really good to have this overview now. I still come back to, I think we're missing a huge chunk of what we should be doing, which is, you know, I don't know how many councillors remember the same people coming in year after year after year asking for the same thing and not seeing any progress. And it just seems to me we're creating a huge workload for ourselves by not actually addressing things that we either say we're going to do or making it clear that we're not. There's a number of outstanding resolutions through last year's annual plan, or this year's annual plan, sorry, reporting to a committee that's just had its last committee meeting of the term, which obviously isn't going to happen now for who knows how long. So I welcome this approach. I do think there's a gap. I'm happy to chase that up separately with the Office of the CE, because I think, you know, the best use of our time is to be efficient with how we deal with these processes and with submitters that come in so that they're fully informed. So,
If it helps, in the last annual plan, there was a roundup of action items, outstanding action items.
Yeah, okay,
And they
Peter,
will-
that can be dealt separately. It's okay, debate. Aaron? And welcome.
And just on the annual plan, I agree with Yanni that we get the same people coming every year asking for the same things, and they're quite a small percentage of the city. We just hear from the exact same groups and same people. By far the majority of the city never engage with the council, never give us their feedback, never tell us how they want us to spend their money. They did it once, and that was Share an Idea, where a third of the entire city engaged in the process, and that set the benchmark for doing consultation. And I hope that one of the suggestions when we're there in November having the discussion will be that we do that. We should ditch the first annual plan, still do an annual plan, not consult, and put all the effort into middle of next year, middle of winter, we have something like Share an Idea. And the rest of the world will copy us. They'll go, hey, these guys are doing it right. What, that's if 100,000 people turn up again. If only 1,000 turn up, we'll cancel it the following time. But if they turn up in big numbers, then that's the benchmark. It worked well once, it's won awards. I absolutely applaud the staff that come up with the concept. It certainly wasn't the elected members, and it should be celebrated, so we should try it again.
Thank you very much. Jimmy and then Andrew.
This, the staff that done a great job, because we can see the several milestones in here. First is June 1st of the next year. That's a key. Actually, before this 10 years, the long-term plan go to the ELT, at least the elected members, councillors, mayors, etc. We review those one. Then the very important is the end of the 2020. That's kind of finalize the draft one, then go to the following year, the February, to go to the formal consultation. So this kind of the prepare all those ones, particularly this long-term plan for future 10 years, even once every 3 years we need to amendment. This kind of this city the future. So we do appreciate staff highlight this milestone. That's pretty good. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thank you, Jimmy. Andrew?
Thank you. Early in this term of council, we had an informal discussion about what do we give and what do we get. And what we're getting is good reporting, and we're getting potential risks called out early, and we're getting a good framework for the LTP development that I expect is inspiring confidence around the table. I'm certainly feeling very confident in this. But what do we need to give as a council? We need to give guidance and we need to give certainty so that we don't end up with the risk, Peter, that you described playing out. That means that after the election there'll be a requirement for an early confirmation of the strategic directions and the way that they translate into the LTP. It means that there'll need to be an early review of any letter of expectation which is put in place by this council. It means that time will need to be provided for the workshop we were talking about earlier, as distinct from the induction, and there'll be a need for attendance at the workshop by current and new councillors, and then there'll be a need for us to clearly confirm the direction for the LTP, because I think you've made the point well, that it's only by working well together that we'll be able to stick to these timelines and that we'll be able to mitigate the risks. What we've got in front of us is an opportunity to run probably the cleanest LTP process that I've ever seen, but it'll only work if the mechanisms that we've talked about and the continued regular reporting that we've talked about here today continues to happen, but also if as a group of governors we're committed to doing those things that we need to do to provide early and continued and clear guidance.
Okay, well, thank you for the feedback. Yes, look, in plain English, if we
Peter,
get...
there's no need for you to respond.
Oh, okay.
Unless you'd like to come around this side of the table. Any other debate? Okay. Look, yeah, I mean, I think this is very good work. Please continue. You've got the ingredients here, as Andrew noted, but obviously the proof will be in the pudding, which I look forward to tasting as a citizen in the future. So I will put the motion. All in favour say aye. 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 Against. That's carried. Thank you very much.